Alright, you guys, welcome back to another deck profile for you today. Today we are going to be going over, how do I describe this? Probably Aerodactyl, just Aerodactyl.deck, I think would be how to describe this. Sure? Okay. But anyways, the way that this deck was spawned was it was spawned off of Fossil Lock. When we took a look at Fossil Lock in our last tournament, we were like, hey, this necessarily isn't the best way to be playing this deck. We think fossils are good, but we have to play them in some other way to actually make them good. And this is kind of what we come up with. It's way less of a focus on getting the fossil Aerodactyl out. I like this in the deck kind of as like a late game card where you're trying to just to sweep with something. I like it, but it's not a focus where you're playing a whole bunch of basic Pokemon as well and you're trying to attack with those. Instead, it is just kind of focusing on the Aerodactyl because I think the Jet Draft Aerodactyl here from Fate's Collide is one of the best cards in U150. Being able to hit for 120 for a DCE on a non-EX Pokemon with Free Retreat is bananas, and aided with the one from Majestic Dawn to kind of lower some stuff up. And if you ever need to going into the Mega, I think that those alone are enough. If you notice, this deck is really just Aerodactyls. It's got the Relicanth for a basic, and that is it. Plus the Coco, because you're playing a lot of DCs anyways. So, before I go any further, I want to note two proxies because Shining Legends and Crimson Invasions aren't on here yet. The Double Magma Energy is supposed to be counter energy, used as it's got double rainbow when you're behind. And then the X Transceiver is actually going to be a Lusamine. Lusamine, right? I think that's the one where it's search your discard pile for a supporter and a stadium. I wanted to play that. I wanted to play that card specifically in here for Strange Cave. It's one of the easiest way to get around your Aerodactyl. If you end up playing it early game, you can still use Strange Cave to get Aerodactyls. Get Aerodactyls onto the bench. So there is that. But yeah, let's take a look at some of the other Pokemon. You have like the Aerodactyls, like I said. This Aerodactyl is one that I'm not quite sure if it's actually worth playing or not. The extra 10 damage isn't necessarily that big, but it is something that you can Mega Evolve up. I think that's probably the one you're going to want to Mega Evolve. You especially don't want to Mega Evolve either of these two, and you can't Mega Evolve this one. So I think having like a designated one to Mega Evolve is pretty nice. But you also could just Mega Evolve the Jet Draft one if that's what you're looking at. So nothing but Aerodactyls. We do have the Omanite as kind of another way also to get around the Aerodactyl, being able to just get these Aerodactyls out and bench them with Revive Fossil by flipping heads. I think that's a good enough card to play, especially since we are playing four mysterious fossils and the buried fossil, so we have ways to get this sort of stuff out. It also helps when you're item locked. And there's no Aerodactyls in your hand from Strange Cave. You can search your deck for them, so evolve your buried fossil into the Omanite and then start flipping for Revive Fossil, and getting those Aerodactyls out from your deck if you're item locked early. So there's that. You do have your classic. We are playing, sorry, for the other attackers. We do have a Relicanth. I think this is a pretty good one-of attacker in a lot of decks that play fighting. If you notice, this deck actually does have a fair amount of snipe capabilities, with the fact that we're playing Coco with the Rock Chill Drive doing 10 to all the bench, and then there's one other Pokemon that also has snipe. I can't really remember. I don't think it actually, never mind, there really isn't. Aerodactyl, right. So you have the spread damage with Coco, this Aerodactyl to put 2 on all the Poke Powers, and then Rock Chill Drive to kind of spread. So Grand Swell is actually going to be able to take some big knockouts. Generally, if they have you're already going to take shots with the tool. If their tools in the stadium get above 3, Grand Swell can take knockouts on Porygons and Claydolls and that sort of thing. But with all of the softening up of the Primal Claw and the flying flips, Grand Swell is just going to be able to one-shot even bigger Pokemon. So I think having that snipe is really, really good, especially in this deck. I think this card is actually just kind of broken in general because it makes sure that your opponent can't get too crazy with their items and stuff, and they're not going to know that it's coming, right? You're just going to drop it and hit something and they're going to be like, whoa, that was crazy. So we are also playing a Celebi X to complement the rest of the support line, just because this deck is very reliant on DCs. You start noticing this card is actually finding its way more and more into our decks. Same with Porygon Z. You are playing a lot of spreads, so I think Porygon Z makes sense, but in general, Porygon Z is just finding its way into our decks more and more often. So, moving on to supporters, like I said, this is a Lusamine, so don't let that confuse you. Get a lot of other just standard looking supporters here. We are playing that Iris in here, the Oracle. You could play the Mallow as well. Like I've said in the past that with DCE heavy reliant decks, you want Oracle and Mallow, but I don't think it's like 100% necessary in this deck, just because you have ways of single attachments as well. So there is that to consider. That's really about it for supporters. There really isn't anything new or weird in here. For items, so you'll notice there's a couple random ones. I've always said the Devo Spray goes hand in hand with the Porygon Z. You got to play both of those. And if you're playing the Cell BX, I think you need to play the Fuji as well to help with your bench space, because it's gonna start clogging up once you get too many of them. If you notice, we are playing a Rescue Stretcher and a Pokemon Retriever, right? Where are you at? I guess we're not. Never mind. There's the Rescue Stretcher. Oh, there it is. Sorry, yeah, I was like, I swear to we were. Pokemon Retriever, yeah, we're playing both of those, and that's to help with the Strange Cave. Yeah, you have like, so what, 7 basic fighting energy, so Super Rod's really not going to be that useful. I think having the Rescue Stretcher and Pokemon Retriever option for the combo with Strange Cave is just going to be better than having that Super Rod and having to search it out. There was a lot of extra space in this deck, so hopefully I'm not forgetting anything, but that's where you see cards like Red Card, cards like Lost Remover, extra cards that are finding their way into the deck here. We made the deck and we had like 5 spaces left over, and we're like, what do we put in? So a couple of these cards came from that. So if you don't like the idea of Lost Remover, a card that I think we want to play more and more and more of, if we can find the space for it, I think Lost Remover is actually really, really good. Especially decks like this one that relies so much on special energies. I think Lost Remover is it's finding its place in the format now. And then Red Card, this deck does have a lot of spread, so you could do some sort of cool red cards. You Red Card and then Coco spread all of their Pokemon away. I think having that level of disruption along with Porygon Z is kind of underrated, and we haven't really taken advantage of that because we haven't found a deck that it really slides into. But we have a lot of extra room in this deck, so we can play Red Card. And speaking of room, you notice we also have Double Gust and Switch. I've talked about Double Gust in the past being a card that we're probably going to play more of, and this deck does have a lot of room in it, so that is one to consider. Special charge for the special energy reliant here, max potion. And Mega Turbo, yeah, you see that too. And that's so that you can max potion your Mega Aerodactyl if you need to, and then attach a DCE and Mega Turbo to charge it back up in one attack. And that's not necessarily the hardest to do, because you just need one of those 3 and Oracle or Teammates, and you have that combo in your hand. So I think having the Mega Turbo, while it may seem kind of impractical, is definitely worth it. So all these cards that I've talked about, Max Potion, Mega Turbo, Red Card, and Lost Remover, and Switch, and Double Gust, those cards are all cards that could be cut if you're looking at trying to find more energies, maybe 1 or 2 more. We are playing the EXP share, even though we are only playing 7 fighting energies, and that may seem like a kind of weird combo. So that's another card you could point to, being like, oh, that's kind of redundant because you don't have that many experience, you don't have that much experience to share. So just looking at slight redundancies, that if your playstyle doesn't warrant these cards, that's where I would go to cut. And then tool cards, we're already on tool cards, so you have the EXP share. I think all of these are warranted. Fluffy Berry and Floatstone, playing both of them to go along with that Double Gust, just to have extra ways to retreat after you play the card. Muscle Band and Choice Band, so that you're, so that Jet Draft is actually doing more damage if you needed to one-shot something big. Or if Coco needs to take an active on the knockout. A knockout on the active. Nice. And as far as stadiums go, it's going to be your standard stuff. You're going to see Broken Time Space. It is an evolution deck, even though it's kind of not really. Fighting Stadium for fighting Pokemon, and then, like I said, the Strange Cave is probably one of your MVPs here. There's only 5 ways to evolve. We notice we're not playing old Amber Aerodactyl, either the new one or the old one, just because those actually give up prizes when you get knocked out. So I like just these 4 mysterious fossils and then call it good. The buried fossil is for if you're item locked, or just extra ways to get out Pokemon. So remember, again, this is the extra Chiva is Lusamine, and the double Magma Energy is a counter energy. But outside of that, this is the list. If you have any questions or anything like that, please do not hesitate to ask. We will answer everything and anything. If not, hope you guys have a great rest of your day.